Hello and welcome to Brunch with Books. And today we are in March, and I have come up with my team again with two new books. Yes, this time it is something which is like if the greatest courage in life is simply refusing to shrink, what will you do? Will you shrink or will you not? So today we will begin with Pride and Prejudice from Jane Austen and pair it with the wisdom of The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. So let's see what is the takeaway from these two books in this month. And over to you, Dr. Geeta, for more insight and wisdom from these books.
Thank you, Shritapa. Hi, everyone. As we celebrate Women's Day today, I say three cheers to all men and women who are aligned with the true essence of what this day stands for: dignity, equality, courage, and growth. And truly, none captured this spirit more brilliantly than Jane Austen when she wrote her iconic novel Pride and Prejudice over 2 centuries ago. Published in 1813 and yet modern, this classic introduces us to the proud, reserved William Darcy and the sharp witted and spirited Elizabeth Bennet. Darcy begins with pride, shaped by privilege, status, and social conditioning. Elizabeth begins with prejudice, shaped by wounded dignity and quick judgments. Both are operating within those roles that society constructed for them. A wealthy gentleman trained to value rank and refinement. A woman in a marriage obsessed world taught that her security lies in finding the right husband. And Jane Austen makes that clear in her iconic opening line of the novel. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Though it is a social truth in reality, Austen is being ironic, gently mocking a society obsessed with marriage, status, and financial survival. Darcy enters the neighborhood of Bennets, who have 5 marriageable daughters. And then comes the first ball. Darcy is being proud, reserved, observing, and with one dismissive remark, he reduces Elizabeth to a passing judgment. Tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. In that moment, when Elizabeth overhears that remark, her prejudice kicks in. She sees women are being assessed, measured, ranked. But Elizabeth does not shrink. She does not seek validation. She does not crumble under rejection. She laughs. She chooses dignity and self respect over approval. And in a society that expected compliance, that choice is quietly revolutionary. Austen challenges the notion that beauty and obedience define a woman's worth. She questions entitlement masked as superiority. She holds a mirror to her society and perhaps to ours too. So today, on Women's Day, as we celebrate strength wrapped in grace and independence rooted in empathy, we ask, what does it truly mean to stand firm in a world that expects you to bend? Because Pride and Prejudice is not just a love story. It is a story of awakening, of equality, of becoming, and that is why it still speaks to us 200 years later. So, my question to you all viewers: have you ever been dismissed, underestimated, or evaluated unfairly? And how did you respond? Did you shrink or did you stand? So, I invite Dr. Siddharth to give his reflection on this.
That's such an important question you are asking, Dr. Geeta, and thank you so much for sharing that valuable story from Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen has written so many years back. Um, Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today's BWB session. I want to share this particular incident which had happened in my life, and it's very much similar to what question you are asking, Dr. Geeta. When a situation like we are pushed hard and we are not respected enough or we are taken for granted, how do we stand at that point? I think my experience around this has been when in my first project I had worked very hard and had given my long nights in that project, and at the end of the day when the the appraisal cycle was something which corporate typically has appraisal cycles. And when those appraisal cycles happened, I was rated very low. Now I went to my program manager and asked that I think I worked very hard and I did whatever you asked for, but then I don't agree to this appraisal which has been done. And she was a person who was very respected as a person in the senior leadership. And I don't know how I got that gut to even ask that question to her, but I asked this question, and she was telling me that, Siddharth, you are just a fresher. You just started, and you cannot expect too much from this appraisal because you have just started. But then that time, I was asking her that, okay, I am a fresher, but whatever you asked for, whatever delivery I had to give, I have given that. And then she told me that there are some seniors in the project who need to be given better appraisals, and that is the reason which freshers always get this mediocre appraisal. But now that you have raised this question, I think we should look at it, and maybe next time I will check on your work in that area. I was surprised and taken aback that in a corporate world, still there is a lot of hierarchy games which are played, and it is not really the worth of the work, but the work of the position which matters. That day I had a shift, and the shift was that if I put my hard work, or if I put my efforts into something, then I also need to show that that effort has been put in. Because unless I do that, I will not be true to myself, and slowly and very quickly I will lose interest in whatever I'm doing. So I think that was my lesson taken from that incident. But I completely kind of connect to this, that in these moments, many a times we shrink. We think that, oh, maybe this was what we deserved, or we never deserved much more than this. But if we are true to our capability and we understand our worth, I think that is where things change. And I feel that was something which had a turning point in my life. And I believe that if we don't shrink and stand for ourselves, things matter, things will change, and things do change for people who do that. So, with that, I will pass on to Shitapa to share her story. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Siddharth, for sharing that, and I'm sure will be agreeing with you, and we definitely understand if we value ourselves, then the world values. We need to stand for us rather than shrinking, and your example explains why. Because I also have to share one more example, which is a real life incident. Sudha Murthy, which people know, she is the famous person. She writes books and wife of Narayan Murthy, the CEO of Infosys. So Sudha Murthy, once she was waiting in the airport lounge, dressed in a very simple cotton sari and slippers. And there was a fellow passenger, and the fellow passenger assumed she didn't belong in the business class lounge. And the person questioned her presence, and they suggested like she might be in a wrong place. So instead of they were questioning her like, you might be in a wrong lounge, why you here. They didn't expect her to be among them. So instead of reacting angrily, what Siddhamurti did was she just remained calm and dignified. Later, that same person, when they boarded the flight, got to know and realized that who she was, and they felt very, embarrassed about what they did. So it's like how you respond to people. There, either you react to what they said or you remain dignified. So your quiet confidence shows who you are, just like Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice does. Like she has her own self worth, and that's what we are discussing today. Over to you, Sujata, for more insights.
Thank you, Shritapa. That was such an interesting incident. I mean, true life and something we've all felt it some. It seems so very familiar to us because most of us have stood exactly there, waiting to see whether we are approved of before we decide how much space we are allowed to take. So, in the Gifts of Perfection, early in the book only, Brené Brown, she makes a very simple but uncomfortable point. We've been taught to believe that belonging comes after approval. That only, once people accept us, then we can relax and become our authentic selves. But she says the truth works the other way around. Belonging only happens after we choose authenticity. And authenticity, she reminds us, is not a personality trait. It's a daily decision, a decision to show up as we are, unfinished, imperfect, and still worthy. And now let's step into literature for a moment. As Dr. Geeta has just narrated in the Pride and Prejudice, there's that scene at the ball where Mr. Darcy, he passes judgment on a young woman and declares her tolerable but not handsome enough. For a woman of that time, this should have been devastating. This was society handing down a verdict. But here's the extraordinary thing. Elizabeth Bennet does not internalize it. She does not rush to fix herself. She does not shrink. She laughs. That laughter is not arrogance, it is self trust. It is a quiet confidence of someone who does not outsource her worth. And that is exactly what Brown means by authenticity. Elizabeth doesn't wait for validation to believe she matters. She believes she matters and lets the world catch up. Of course, Brown is honest about the choice, about the cost of this choice. Authenticity makes us vulnerable. When we stop people pleasing, some people become uncomfortable. But the alternative, she says, is far worse. Living a life that truly isn't ours. So authenticity is a courage to hold on to yourself's sense of worth when the whole world tries to define it for you. And with that thought, I'd like to hand the mic to our to my friend Jasveer, who will share a real life moment of choosing authenticity over approval. Over to you, Jasveer.
Thank you, Sujata. Uh, yes, authenticity is something that is valued and is something where defines your self-worth. And all the time, there are people in this world who are trying to please others, and in the bargain, they lose their own identity. A very great example of a lady who chose to be authentic and who chose to believe in herself rather than believe what the world was saying. This goes back to the year 2000 when the former Miss World, Miss Universe, Shushmita Sen, decided to have adopt a female child. In those days, the laws were very strict about a single woman adopting a child and to add to it a female child because it was considered a great responsibility. And she was young, she was unmarried. So, the adoption by the court was taking a long time. She waited for 3 years and then finally, at the age of 24, she adopted Rene and she's beautifully brought up this young girl. And it is extraordinary because in those times, the laws were difficult. The society would have considered it a very weird act. How can she go ahead and adopt when she doesn't have a male partner? And at this point in time, it just shows her upbringing. When her father, Shubir Sen, he had unwavering support towards his daughter. And he said, I have not raised my daughter to be a wife only, which is extraordinary because it's that support that she got from her parents that gave her the strength to fight legally to adopt a child who had lost her parents. And it's such a beautiful thing to do, to have that faith in yourself and to bring up another human being and give them that value and that identity which she would have lost if she was still an orphan in an orphanage. And it's extraordinary. And she was even to the extent that Shushmita said, there was like a 6-month foster period. And before the final adoption, she was ready to flee with the child. She was so determined to give that child a good life. And this is an extraordinary thing because later on, she managed to adopt another female child, which is actually not allowed in the adoption, according to the adoption laws, because she could not adopt a child of the same gender. But this is what Shushmita Sen did. She was authentic. She knew her self-worth. She was not interested in pleasing the society, and she knew what she wanted, and she stood by it. That conviction helped her. So hats off to people like this in the world, which make us believe that self-belief and self-worth is finally what matters. And this is an extraordinary example. Now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Geeta to continue with the Pride and Prejudice story. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasbir. And the story you have narrated, that is the live example, is so gladdening because such people really exist in this world, and it is so true. When we with authenticity is truly priceless, and when we lose ourselves in people pleasing, our identity is lost. Our whole own the whole purpose of our life is lost. So I would like to continue with the story of. So in this, one second, just I've lost the thread here. Just pause. 1 second. Where did I go? Huh. So in this phase of Pride and Prejudice, love and misunderstanding begin to blend. Elizabeth's beloved sister Jane Bennet falls in love with a gentle and warm-hearted Charles Bingley, Darcy's close friend. It is a hopeful, tender romance, but it is disrupted. And the disruption comes from Darcy. Darcy intervenes. He believes that Jane is not expressive enough, not visibly emotional enough, not deeply attached enough. So he separates them. Isn't it control, class consciousness, and male decision making disguised as protection? Elizabeth is furious. Her resentment deepens. Then George Wickham, the son of Darcy's family steward, enters the scene. He is charming, attentive, persuasive, and he tells Elizabeth a story that Darcy wronged him, mistreated him, denied him what was promised. And she believes him. Why? Because it confirms what she already feels. Elizabeth's perception hardens into certainty. She is convinced she understands Darcy completely. But beneath all this, Darcy is changing. He is drawn to her wit. Her refusal to flatter him, her courage to disagree, makes him feel drawn to her. In a society where women are expected to be agreeable, Elizabeth debates, challenges, teases. She's not pleasing, she's powerful, and that unsettles him. Elizabeth does not try to become ideal. She chooses to remain authentic, but authenticity does not make us infallible. Strength is not the same as being right. Strength is the willingness to re examine, to reflect, to admit, I may have been wrong, because pride exists in Darcy and prejudice exists in Elizabeth. And growth, true growth, will require both of them to soften, to listen, to confront their blind spots. And that is the quiet courage this round explores. Not just the courage to speak, but the courage to reconsider. So, my question to you all viewers, when was the last time you formed a strong opinion about someone only to discover that you were wrong? Do you have the courage like Elizabeth Bennet to say, I misunderstood? Now I invite Dr. Siddharth to share his reflection with us.
Wow, what a powerful experience this is, when somebody actually has some concept, the opinion formed for somebody, and then you find out that that opinion was baseless or was misunderstood, and then you actually commit to it that no, I have not understand, I misunderstood, and you actually agree, and then confront that particular reality. I feel this is very powerful story which you have narrated, Dr. Geeta. And many a times in our lives we actually go through it because this is not um, very easy to do, that we actually do commit a mistake, or we have understood something and then at some point of time we realize it was a mistake, and we go ahead and say or tell somebody that it was me who has done it, or me who has misunderstood it, and it was never your fault. I think it takes a lot of courage to do that. I have seen this happening with a very close relation of mine, where she misunderstood me completely, and I had this very strong reason to actually um, stay away from her when she had misunderstood me because of some differences. And at some point of time, maybe a few of her friends told her that this was a misunderstanding, and she has to understand the perspective from where I am coming. The incident occurred when there was a miscommunication happening between us, and we were not talking. And I think that is one of those incidents where I feel communication matters a lot. Because if you stop talking to somebody when you have a misunderstanding and you're opinionated, then you close a lot of doors at that time. And I think precisely that is what had happened. The person had closed doors and we couldn't connect anymore, and there was a big misunderstanding going on. But at some point of time, our common friends started talking to each other and explaining us this that there is a misunderstanding, there is something which has gone wrong here, and I understood, she understood, and then we started talking. But when we connected again, the emotion which we had was of apologizing to each other, and that moment was tearful. It was very light and refreshing for both of us when we actually went through it. And I felt like, yes, with communication, we could have sorted it much earlier, but then we took time. And what happened during that time is just, we both created negative thoughts inside us, and we continue to build on our ego of not talking to each other, and that actually distanced us further and further. And I think that is the biggest problem which happens when you take things very seriously and you misunderstand and you are not able to get the perspective of the other person, but you continue to hold on your perspective and you are not open to that, no open to understanding the other person. So I think this incident is very close to my heart, and I feel um, in situations like these, we should just let our heart speak and not our mind talk, because our mind plays these games where we kind of build on this ego and we continue to distance ourselves from the facts on the ground, and we build on something which is maybe misinterpreted or based on something which is false. At that moment, mind actually plays games and heart is still, trying to connect back. And that is exactly where your heart should actually, you should try to follow your heart rather than your mind. I feel that is what I can relate to when I think about this discussion and experience of Pride and Prejudice. Over to you, Shitapa. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Siddharth. Yes, you are absolutely right. Misunderstanding and not knowing the facts can shadow the truth. And yes, only heart can see and understand if you are open enough to uh, see what it is like, and communication is the door to do that. So yes, absolutely right. And I can add on to it with someone very famous we all know, and how his life started. Let me share that, and you see where he stands now because of perception. How much things can get impacted. So Amitabh Bachchan, we all know, in his early age, film producers repeatedly rejected him. They said his deep voice and unusual looks wouldn't suit the cinema, Bollywood cinema. So imagine how discouraging that must have been for him. But he didn't shrink. He kept on working. He kept on learning, and he started improving himself based on the feedback he's getting. Eventually, he became one of the most iconic actors and most loved actors across generation. So this is exactly what happens. Just like Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice, she was building, a perception about, misunderstanding Darcy, just because Wickham's story was, playing in her mind that okay, this has happened, and that's why that feeling was coming on, and everything was going. of the track between them. But what I understand from this story is that whatever is your first impression, either you have got the information from someone, or maybe that day was bad for that person, do not go with that perception throughout. Try to look beyond, find the truth, have that courage to find the truth, and don't go by assumptions, because things change, situations change, and you may reveal much more about that person and his strength and qualities. So respect that and build on those things rather than just the illusion of your mind and perception. These plays very important role in offices and many more places. So that's where things go wrong and we misjudge people and think not capable, etc. Just like Amitabh Bachchan, you see, today who he is and how the world has initially seen him, he has proved it wrong. So over to you, Sujata, for more insights.
Thank you, Shritapa. As you just said, that that is so very hard, even in corporates. Standing tall is difficult, but admitting that we are wrong, that takes a different kind of courage. In the story, Elizabeth hears dramatic account that confirms everything she already believes. And because it feels right, she doesn't question it. She doesn't investigate. She accepts it fully. And honestly, haven't we all done that at some point of our lives? We don't want the truth. We want confirmation. In the next guidepost of the Gifts of Imperfection, Brown talks about perfectionism and self compassion. She says, perfectionism isn't about high standards, it's about fear, the belief that if we are flawless, we'll never be blamed, judged, or shamed. But life doesn't work that way. The real antidote, she says, is self compassion, the ability to say, I made a mistake, but that doesn't make me a bad person. She also talks about emotional resilience, how we try to numb uncomfortable feelings, shame, regret, disappointment. But here's the catch, we cannot numb selectively. When we numb pain, we also numb joy, connection, growth. That's exactly what's happening here. Elizabeth's pride protects her from discomfort, but it also delays her growth. Meanwhile, something interesting is happening elsewhere. Darcy is doing internal work, questioning himself, changing quietly. And eventually, Elizabeth reaches the most powerful moment for journey. She allows herself to say, I was wrong. That sentence does not diminish her, it expands her. As someone beautifully put it, growth requires humility from both pride and prejudice. So, self compassion is what allows us to admit we were wrong without losing our sense of worth. Because when your self worth is solid, being wrong isn't a collapse, it's a correction. And with that, I'd love to pass the mic to Jasveer, who will share a lived moment of growth. So, from any real life story, over to you, Jasveer.
Yes, Sujata. Life is so many examples. One of the very important examples is of a parent who constantly, criticizes or shames their child, and this might be because of their own childhood traumas, which they do not understand. But there are times when even a teenager can explain to their parent that, see, this kind of attitude will not help, and it takes a lot of courage for a parent to actually go and acknowledge that they have wronged their children. For example, a father who keeps admonishing the child that if you do not work hard now, you'll have midlife crisis, or some of those kind of constant criticism, which is just trying to bring down the morale of the child. And in the end, the child starts doubting their own self-worth. Uh, and there are times when finally maybe that there is a realization that the parent has that this is creating a sense of depression and negativity in the child, and the courage that a parent as an adult should show is to apologize and acknowledge that they have been wrong in being constantly criticizing or demeaning their child, because that is not going to help in the growth of the child. So this kind of apology, because every time it's considered the parents are like gods to their children, and they are all knowing and they know everything, but that's not true, because every human being is subject to making mistakes. We are we are mortals finally, we are not gods. And acknowledging this fact and accepting it and apologizing to your child, even if the child is younger to you. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that age-wise you're older than a person or whatever, but actually acknowledging and apologizing is a great act of courage. And it also shows compassion and empathy. And why not? As a parent, if that is what you portray to your child, the child also understands and acknowledges that my parent is human and he or she has made mistakes. And this is the journey of true growth in a human being when there is compassion, acceptance, and acknowledgement. And that's where the true growth of an individual begins. And the child also becomes a more empathetic and compassionate adult because it's a cycle of life. It's exactly what you teach is what will be repeated in that particular individual's life. So I believe acknowledgement, acceptance of one's mistakes, and apologizing is a very important fact for the true growth of any human being. So let me hand this over to Dr. Geeta to Shritapa to conclude today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasbir, and thanks all for such an amazing insight and from these two beautiful books. Just to wrap up, I will say do not shrink, stand for yourself. And if in case you have wrong perception about someone, go acknowledge, accept it, and be courageous to tell that person, yes, I misunderstood, and now I know you better, or try to find the fact before even creating that perception. So with this, I wrap up today's session. See you again in the next episode. Till then, take care of yourself. Happy Women's Day once again. Stay blessed, be courageous, and let this world be a beautiful place. Thank you. We have come up with BWB awards. So it's just not books. We are bringing up the opportunity if you are an author or you have the love for writing and you have a short story or a poem. So you can be part of BWB awards, which is starting from 4th of March on the auspicious day of Holi 2026. 4th of March, I hope that you listen me and you're hearing this episode. And if you are a writer or if you love to write a poem, a short story, do submit your work. We will be very happy to see your work and give you the Golden Quill Awards. It's a premium award. Go check our website on Instagram and YouTube, and you will find more details and insights on how to register for the event. With this, I wish you everyone all the best. Go win the award. Thank you. Bye bye.